Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adnan Qaiser. You might have seen me earlier at YouTube giving you lectures on geopolitics, which obviously are aimed at students of international affairs and those observers who are interested in global political affairs, what is going on around the world. So this is part of that series, if you will, in which we are trying to foster our existing knowledge and to learn a couple of other things with regards to geopolitical affairs, geoeconomic affairs, and geostrategic affairs around the world. So, if you recall, in those of you who had listened to part 1 of our discussion on Islamic radicalism, which I prefer to call religious terrorism, so this is part 2 in connection to that series. So I know there had been a long delay, so that's why an explanation is due to those of my listeners who have been avidly waiting for the other episodes to be posted at YouTube. So first of all, please try to understand that these talks and these lectures are not part of my formal profession. So whatever I do it here is part of my is in my spare time. So I understand there is a long gap in uploading, but I had been writing on Afghanistan. Those of you who follow me on my LinkedIn account or read my publications might have seen a 7-part study which I recently concluded on Afghanistan, discussing its past, present, and the future. In view of an agreement which had been signed between the United States and the Taliban on February 29th, 2020, which essentially ended the 19-year-old war or a perpetual conflict in Afghanistan. So, for those of you who are interested in reading, you are most welcome to go to South Asia Journal. It's in the United States, or you can read the 7 parts at the prestigious The Geopolitics. So, but the second idea of giving these type of talks is to give you guys a thorough background and an understanding of any issue. Those of you who have listened to my book reviews, which I posted some years ago, on The Alchemist and the 40 Rules of Love. They were very popular books, as well as my 11-part presentation which I gave on CPAC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or the 3-part series which I gave on sales techniques. You would agree that I always try to open up your horizon with complementary or supporting information. Not only I tell you about the subject, but I also try to give you a wider canvas of your understanding and explain to you and try to explain to you all the related aspects of an issue. So if you recall that in the book reviews, I try to teach you the human aspects of our daily lives. I try to enlighten you about the spiritual matters that keep our hearts and minds preoccupied during our day. My aim was to give you and improve your communication skills, and to give you sensitive information about human elements of our life, which we must keep in mind when we are dealing with our loved ones, people whom we meet in our personal or professional capacities. So this is essential because I believe that it is important that in order to have a personal fulfillment and professional growth, so that's why I try to expand your horizon. I try to give you as much information as possible, which could be beneficial to you. So that's why my geopolitical research, which I write and publish, are although very exhaustive, but they do not entail this kind of an elaborate explanation, if you will, which you find me doing in these talks. So while listening to my talks, please hold on to the basic narrative or the primary narrative, because we would be drifting and I would be distracting you off and on, which I think an area which needs your attention, or to develop your better understanding about an related aspect. So I may have to break these discussions in several parts, which might be irritating or annoying to you, and it may break your rhythm. But try to understand that, I try to keep these segments at just maximum around 30 minutes or so, because one, uploading a lengthy discussion at YouTube is pretty difficult, and secondly, it becomes very monotonous. The lecture becomes drags on. So a person who is listening to it loses his or her momentum or focus of attention. So don't lose your your concentration as we would be breaking down the segments into different sections. So. But remember, hold on to the primary narrative. The primary narrative is to learn and understand about Islamic radicalism, which I call religious terrorism. So, because I told you in the introductory part that I strongly believe that the religion of Islam or the faith of Islam has been unjustifiably dragged into this terrorism issue. It has mauled and tarnished the image of every practicing or peace-loving Muslim in the world. And it is imperative on all of us to make it clear to the world that the religion of Islam has nothing to do with any kind of violence or terror, for that matter. This has become a motivated conspiracy having several dimensions, which I'm going to explain to you in due course of time. And it is not only important that we know each and every aspect ourselves, but we must communicate to the world at large with valid arguments and reasoning that the religion of Islam has no connection with terror or violence, for that matter, and there are hidden political agendas associated to it. And if you recall, in the introductory part, I had mentioned to you that the sole source or the sole reason or for this menace or scourge of terrorism in the Muslim world is more political in nature rather than ideological. So a French organization called Fondation pour l'Innovation Politique, Fondation pour l'Innovation Politique, recorded the total number of terror attacks in the world which were conducted between 1979 to 2019. The title of the report was Islamist Terrorist Attacks in the World. Note it down, you can Google search it. Islamist Terrorist Attacks in the World 1979 to 2019. This was dated November 18, 2019. And according to the data collected, ladies and gentlemen, there had been a total of 13,527 terrorist attacks with 73,984 deaths in the Middle East and North African region. In the South Asia, there had been 11,661 terror attacks, killing 50,063 people. Whereas in Sub-Saharan Africa, 6,775 terror-related attacks were recorded, resulting in the loss of life of 35,676 innocent people. So, thus, try to understand that this is incorrect to suggest that the West only remains the target of the Islamic terrorism or religious terrorism, for that matter. The Muslim world itself has been a victim of religious terrorism for a long time. So in order to fight extremism, ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative to first understand the drivers and dynamics of this radical militancy. historically, the root cause, the roots of Muslim unrest lie in the Middle East's oppressive monarchies and autocratic regimes. You may find me repeating these words repeatedly. Please don't feel offended, but I strongly believe that, and there are there are corroborating scholarships as well that confirm this thing, which I'm going to qualify my statements later on with you. So these oppressive regimes or autocratic regimes and brutal monarchies, they had been buttressed by the West for the West's own foreign policy objectives. Therefore, when we study terrorism and condemn it in the harshest possible manner, because violence, cannot be condoned in any shape or kind, we must carry out a distinction between terrorism and someone who is struggling for his fundamental human rights or democratic rights. So remember the adage or a saying which says one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. So this presentation, ladies and gentlemen, is an effort to highlight Al-Qaeda and Daesh, whatever is called Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, in black, and the political issues that engulf or dogged the Muslim world at large. I would like to present them to you in white, and I want to eliminate the gray area in between in your understanding, so that you have a firm understanding that what is this terrorism and how where it is leading us. The problem, as I mentioned to you, is how the Muslim world is governed in the Middle East, especially. So there are legitimate grievances among the population that has been living a subjugated life. Under these autocratic dynastic regimes and oppressive monarchies in the Gulf, there has been a lot of resentment among the people that had been coming out in the shape or form of violence. And that's not a new phenomenon, it's an old phenomenon. And as I said, violence and terror largely remains a political issue. It has nothing to do with the faith of Islam. So when we say Gulf, we refer to the Persian Gulf, ladies and gentlemen, as has been historically maintained. Unfortunately, many Arab countries, they are not very happy with this term, so they are trying to assert their monopoly these days by calling the Persian Gulf as Arabian Gulf. Such a distinction, further highlights the difference between the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Gulf. It highlights the historical Islamic concept of differentiating between the Arab and the Ajam. Ajam or Ajami means outsiders or the foreigners to the Arabic lands. So a Shiite Iran, ladies and gentlemen, please understand, on the other hand, is no democracy at all. It is a farce or a facade of a democratic dispensation. Iran is a full-fledged theocratic state that has been run under a system which is called Walayat-e-Faqih, or absolute guardianship of the Islamic jurist. This has been put forward by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. This Walayat-e-Faqih is basically a rule of the clergy or Iranian religious scholars. They are also called as imams, though they do not carry the same sanctity or level of reverence to the 12 imams of Shiite sect. However, these modern day imams, ladies and gentlemen, carry great monopoly and control over the state resources and the matters of governance. The concept of Walayat-e-Faqih transfers all political and religious authority to those Shia clergy. They make all the key decisions subject to the approval of a supreme clerical leader. The supreme leader who is chosen for his life is called the Wali-e-Faqih. the wali-e-faqih, or the guardian of the Islamic or the Islamist jurist system. So the supreme clerical leader, or wali, provides guardianship or vilayat over the nation. And in doing so, he ensures the top-down strict Islamization of not only the state, but also the society. So theocracy, ladies and gentlemen, is a form of a government in which a deity or a deity or a divine personification of any entity, mostly it is linked to God Almighty, is recognized as the supreme ruling authority. The deity gives divine guidance to the human intermediaries who manage the day-to-day affairs of the government and that of the people who are being ruled. Excuse me. So the 1400 years old Shia-Sunni conflict, this continues to haunt the Muslim civilization even today. And if you view it objectively and from a different angle, you would find that this this Shia-Sunni feud has been a geopolitical brinkmanship, or a tug of war, if you will, for supremacy and hegemony in the Middle East region or over the Muslim world. The Shia-Sunni feud has largely been remained a quest for power between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Both countries always wanted to become the pater familias, or the guardians, or the head of the family of the Islamic world. So therefore, just like terrorism, which I maintain is less ideological and more political in nature, this Shia-Sunni chasm or split is exploited by Muslim states who have been divided into two blocks, with Saudi Arabia on one hand and Iran on the other hand. This power politics has hardly anything to do with the religion of Islam. It is more political dominance over the Muslim civilization. You might have noticed recently the two new contenders to become the leaders of Muslim Ummah, if you will, have stepped up in the arena. They are Turkey and the United Arab Emirates. Both countries are militarily strong, and they're trying to reassert under their new political leadership. And both are trying to extend their powers beyond their borders. Turkey, you might have noticed, is entangled in the Mediterranean Sea as well as in Libya, and United Arab Emirates is all over the place. So what has happened that although we have defeated Al-Qaeda, we have fairly defeated Al-Qaeda, as well as we have crushed Daesh, or the Islamic State, which we normally call it. We are still not at peace, ladies and gentlemen, and the terrorism from the world has not abated. So one of the reasons is that the Muslim countries have been using their proxies. Proxies are also called as non-state actors in different shapes and kinds. And these proxies are used for the political gains and to establish their authority over their Muslim adversaries. So the senseless Saudi war against Yemen that has been ongoing since 2015, the continued unrest in Iraq, the perpetual civil wars in Syria and Libya, and are some of the manifestations of this violence and instability that's been going on for years and years. So what has it led us to? So no points in guessing who benefits from this unrest, this turmoil in the Middle East, and this instability. Of course, it is the terrorist organizations. It is the terror groups, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, that stay strong and keep thriving in this vacuum that has been caused by the power gameplay between these Middle Eastern countries. And mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, until and unless the Muslim world gets rid of the scourge of these dictatorial regimes and their proxies, religious terrorism is not going to going to come to an end. So we had seen an Arab Spring or an Arab uprising in the year 2011, which despite bringing some political changes in a few countries like Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya, had been crushed by a very, very iron hand by these tyrant regimes. And I see no hope that unless the Western powers they stop mollycoddling these kings and the rulers of the Middle East, which is ironic, by the way, because you see, these Western countries claim to be the champions of human rights, democracy, freedom of expression, and fair play. So, despite lofty claims, and the fruits of freedom and democracy have not been allowed to reach the hapless and the poor people of the Middle East. So harsh as it may sound, ladies and gentlemen, but it has been the geopolitical and imperial designs and economic objectives of the Western countries that have kept the Middle East and African continent backward and subjugated. So it had been a well thought out strategy or a policy basically of the Western countries or the Western powers that has remained at play since the Ottoman Empire, which lasted for 6 centuries. It was abolished in year 1922. So at its height of power, the Ottoman Empire encompassed most of the southeastern Europe to the gates of Vienna, including present-day Hungary, the Balkan region, Greece, and parts of Ukraine. It also included portions of the Middle East that are now called as Iraq, Syria, Israel, Egypt, and North Africa. Excuse me. So the Ottoman Empire stretched as far afield to the west to Algeria. And Ottoman Empire also ruled over large parts of the Arabian Peninsula, which comprises of present-day Saudi Arabia. So that you can understand. I'll connect it later on. The conflict between Turkey and Saudi Arabia to become the leader of the Muslim Ummah, because the Turkish believe that they have the right to represent the Muslim world at large. So, however, after its defeat of the Ottoman Empire after the First World War at the hands of the Allied powers through a Treaty of Sèvres, the Treaty of Sèvres was signed on August 10, 1920. There was another treaty which was called the Treaty of Lausanne. This was on July 24th, 1923. So this had been followed by a proclamation of a Turkish Republic, a secular state by Kemal Atatürk on October 29, 1923. So, so since Islamic radicalism or religious terrorism remains integrated into each other or intertwined with the governance issues of the Muslim countries, no discussion could be made complete without analyzing these dynastic, autocratic regimes and oppressive monarchies and these tyrant kingdoms. How they have smartly kept their Muslim populations repressed after the end of the colonization by the European powers. I will tell you subsequently that how after the First and Second World War, the British and French imperial powers, they arbitrarily drew borders and boundaries of the Middle Eastern countries. So they had they artificially created, ladies and gentlemen, the present day several Arab states with little or no regard or for tribal linkages. Arab societies are integrated into each other through tribes. There had been ethnic bonds. They didn't consider the ethnic bond or considered the sectarian sensibilities of the people who are living in those Middle Eastern or that population of those countries who were living. So they were arbitrarily drawn. And if you see the map or an atlas, you would see straight lines dividing different states or different countries in the Middle East, which is pretty ironic and unfortunate. So this was done through a Sykes-Picot agreement between the Great Britain and France, which was signed in May 1916. So Sykes-Picot Accord is also called as Asia Minor Agreement. Now allow me to distract you for a while, to take you to altogether to a different world. But please hold on to this Sykes-Picot Accord between Britain and France in May 1916. We'll revert to it in a moment. So first of all, you have been studying a lot about Middle East and in your educational institutions and about this terrorism. I've been listening about Al-Qaeda, Daesh. Sometimes it is called as Islamic State. Sometimes it is called as Islamic State in Levant. Sometimes it is called as Islamic State in Syria, in Iraq and Syria. So on your television screens or in the news. So let me explain some of these terminologies for your better understanding. So Daesh is the acronym for Daulat-e-Islamiyya wal-Sham. Daulat-e-Islamiyya wal-Sham, and as I said, the terror organization has also been called as ISIS or ISIL. So ISIL stands, as I said, is for Islamic State in Iraq and Levant. And ISIS means Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Both acronyms carry the same significance and meanings. Levant has a T silent in the end, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a historical geographic region in the present day Syria. So it is located in the Eastern Mediterranean in West Asia, or what we call the Middle East today. So here the term Middle East must also be clarified to you, as the region of this West Asia basically sometimes confuses an observer. The terminology of Middle East originated out of a European perspective. So beginning with the 18th century colonization by European powers, however, this its formal adoption came from the British India Office during the 1850s. It was later popularized by an American naval strategist. His name was Alfred Thayer Mahan, who referred to the region lying between Arabia and India as Middle East in year 1902. So during the 18th and 19th centuries, as the British and European empires extended their occupied colonies up to Indonesia and Philippines in the east, and up to several African countries on the south of the globe, a need had arisen to identify this region from the European viewpoint. So thus, in order to distinguish the regions from a British perspective, these countries located at the extreme eastern rim of the Asian continent, like Japan, the North and South Koreas, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, East Timor, Indonesia, Philippines, until Myanmar, were termed as Far East or Far East Asia, or even called as Far Eastern countries. So some of them later became Southeast Asia. Some of these countries later started calling themselves as Southeast Asia as well. So, but originally they were part of the Far East. So, similarly, the colonies that came between East Asia and the West Asia, they were called as South Asia. So they included the countries like present-day Bangladesh, India, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Maldives. So lately, Afghanistan, ladies and gentlemen, has also been called as part of South Asia, whereas I believe, and I always believed, it to be part of West Asia or Central Asia. So I stand corrected now that Afghanistan is part of South Asia now. So likewise, the countries situated on the west of the British Indian subcontinent were called Middle East, and those situated further close to the Europe they were called as Near Asia. So remember, the nearness or the distance from the British or European powers led to their designations or their titles granted to these geographic regions, and not the other way around. So present day Middle East, ladies and gentlemen, comprises of 17 nations. They have an estimated population of some 371 million people living in Iraq, Iran, Cyprus, Oman, Egypt, Bahrain, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Palestine, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. So please note this point that Iran declines to be part of Middle East because it says it maintains its own Persian civilizational identity. Maghreb. So another important term that had emerged over these years for the North African countries is called Maghreb. Maghreb, as in Arabic language or in Persian or even in Urdu language, means west. So the countries which are lying or situated on the northwestern part of the African continent, are called as Maghreb. Maghreb primarily includes Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, and Mauritania. Maghreb further constitutes the disputed territories of Western Sahara Desert, which is mostly controlled by Morocco. It also constitutes the cities of Melilla, and Ceuta, which are claimed by Morocco, but they're claimed by Morocco, but are controlled by Spain. And as of 2018 figures, the Maghreb region had a total population of over 100 million people. MENA and Sahel. Then there are two more terms used for the broader region called MENA and Sahel. MENA stands for altogether the Middle East and North African region when referred to as a whole, as a whole geographic region. So MENA comprises of all the countries which are in Middle East and in North Africa. And Sahel, likewise, ladies and gentlemen, is a geographic region which is stretching between Atlantic Ocean in the west and Red Sea to its east. It is situated between the Sahara Desert and Sudan's savanna region to the south. So Sahel name again is derived from an Arabic, Persian, or Urdu name which means shoreline or coastline. So probably because of its contiguity with Atlantic Ocean or Red Sea, it could be called as. So countries that constitute a Sahel include northern Senegal, southern Mauritania, central Mali, northern Burkina Faso, the extreme south of Algeria, Niger, the extreme north of Nigeria, parts of Cameroon and Central African republics, central Chad, central and southern Sudan, the extreme north of South Sudan, Eritrea, and the extreme north of Ethiopia. So I think this has become a heavy dose of geography lesson for you today. But it's important for you to understand the geography or the layout of this region as a whole, because when we would be discussing in later segments about this religious terrorism in detail, these terminologies and these acronyms are going to be very helpful. And those of you, mind you, who had listened to the segment which I had posted on YouTube in the same context of Islamic radicalism, it was titled The Curse of Boko Haram in Nigeria. So, I used a lot of names of African countries in this. So probably when you connect with what I have told, the terminologies, Sahel, Maghreb, and then you may better familiarize yourself with those elements. So. So allow me to end this session here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how much time I have consumed. So this will constitute as segment A of our part 2, in which we are trying to gather or assimilate the overview of Islamic radicalism or religious terrorism, which has been affecting our lives as a whole. I had asked you in the beginning to hold on to the Sykes-Picot Accord of May 1916. So don't forget about that thing when we come next with the next part of this discussion as part B, and that will be segment B of part 3 of this discussion. So until then, take good care and bye for now. This is Adnan Qaiser signing off.